This fruit has 3 times the vitamin C of an apple, and you won't find it at the supermarket. Imagine that for a moment. A native North American tree, its soft, custard-like fruit melting on the tongue with notes of mango, banana, and pineapple, packing concentrated nutrition in each bite, and most Americans under 50 have never tasted it. That is the paradox at the heart of this story. Discover the fruit with 3x more nutrients than an apple and why it's disappearing. Before we go any further, check the description for links to where to taste pawpaw and for planting and research resources. If this story speaks to you, stay with me. On a September night in 1849, Harriet Tubman moved through the woods. It was harvest season for a fruit that grew along riverbanks and forest edges, the pawpaw, Asimina triloba. When food was scarce, when the road ahead was perilous, a ripe pawpaw could mean calories, comfort, and a small, fierce consolation. The fruit's soft flesh was easy to eat quickly, its sugars and fats giving the strength to keep going. That image of a stubborn fruit offering help to people fleeing violence anchors a long, complicated history. The pawpaw has been part of diets here for millennia, and its seasonal arrival in September has been woven into survival stories, rituals, and memories that stretch from indigenous groves to early American kitchens. What is a pawpaw? Say the scientific name once, Asimina triloba, then think simply pawpaw. It looks unassuming, greenish-yellow when ripe, the size of a mango or a small papaya, with a smooth, custardy interior. People often describe the flavor as a tropical mashup, mango, banana, pineapple, with a texture that melts on the tongue. It grows natively across roughly 26 states in the eastern United States, favoring river edges, floodplains, and the dappled light of forest margins. Historically, it wore many nicknames, some affectionate, some dismissive, but its botanical identity is clear and its presence persistent. The trees still stand in hedgerows and woods, even where the fruit vanished from markets. Nutrition is part of the pawpaw's claim to attention. According to research cited by Kentucky State University and other sources, a 100-gram serving contains 3 times as much vitamin C as an apple. That same body of work points to higher levels of calcium, iron, and magnesium compared with many common temperate fruits, a profile of essential amino acids unusual for a fruit, and a favorable fatty acid composition that helps make the pawpaw richer and more sustaining than its smooth texture suggests. Researchers have also identified compounds called acetogenins in pawpaw tissues, substances that, in laboratory studies, show biological activity worth further study. It's important to be clear, these laboratory findings are promising, but they are not clinical proof of disease treatment or cure. The correct takeaway is that pawpaw is a nutrient-dense, locally available food with biochemical complexity that researchers find interesting, not a medical panacea. If the pawpaw is so nourishing and so native, why did it disappear from our tables? To answer that, we have to move from taste and history into logistics and technology. For much of North American history, food distribution looked a lot different. People ate what was local and seasonal. Indigenous communities managed and encouraged pawpaw groves for generations. Archaeological finds, including pawpaw seeds at sites like Russell Cave dating back thousands of years, suggest a long relationship between people and this tree. Early colonists adopted the fruit. Records show gardeners and statesmen such as George Washington and Thomas Jefferson growing and noting it. Explorers and soldiers ate it on long treks. The pawpaw was part of a continuous cultural landscape. Then a particular human invention changed the rules of what could be sold far from where it grew. In 1938, Frederick McKinley Jones patented a portable refrigeration unit for trucks, a breakthrough that helped give rise to the modern cold chain, the continuous refrigerated logistics network that moved fresh produce from distant farms into year-round shelves. Think of the cold chain as a refrigerator on wheels that must stay uninterrupted from harvest to store. In the decades after that invention, roughly from the 1940s into the 1960s, large-scale, centralized distribution expanded rapidly. Markets began to favor fruits that could tolerate long transport, standard packing, and the three-stage dance of harvest, shipping, retail display. Here is where biology meets economics. Pawpaw fruit is fragile. It ripens quickly and bruises easily. After harvest, it has a short post-harvest window, often only 2 to 3 days at peak ripeness, before softening into fermentation. It was adapted for local dispersers. Animals like raccoons, opossums and foxes eat the ripe fruit and carry seeds only short distances, spreading the trees locally rather than across long supply chains. The cold chain rewarded durability. Apples, bananas and oranges, fruits that can survive long shipping, standard packing and weeks in transit, fit the new system. The result was not a plotted disappearance, but rather a market selection. The logistic demands of a globalizing year-round food economy favored shelf-stable species, and fragile local fruits like the pawpaw were left out of industrial distribution channels. The trees stayed in the landscape. The fruit simply stopped appearing on grocery shelves. That loss had ripple effects beyond taste. Because pawpaw trees can be grown with minimal pesticides and naturally support certain wildlife, most notably serving as the host plant for the zebra swallowtail butterfly, shifting to centralized cold chain crops contributed to an erosion of local food biodiversity. Generations who grew up eating apples shipped from hundreds of miles away have no memory of the pawpaw's late summer arrival, and with the loss of routine consumption comes a thinning of cultural memory. The disappearance from commerce isn't a total disappearance from the land. Pawpaw persists in woods and abandoned fields, and wildlife still finds it. But the social practices, recipes, harvest rhythms, shared memories have been diluted. If the story of decline is largely logistical, the story of revival is grassroots and scientific. In recent decades, researchers and growers have begun to reimagine what pawpaw could be in a world that still values convenience, but also wants flavor, seasonality, and local nutrition. Programs at universities, most notably work at Kentucky State University, have studied pawpaw's nutritional profile and worked on selecting and naming cultivars that have better flavor consistency and more reliable fruiting. Collectively, breeders have developed and promoted more than 24 named cultivars. 27+ varieties are now in circulation in some accounts, so that growers can plant trees with clearer expectations about taste and harvest window. At the same time, local festivals and markets have brought the fruit back into public awareness. The Ohio Pawpaw Festival is one of the more visible celebrations where people gather in September to taste custard pies, ice cream, and savory experiments made with pawpaw. Small farmers' markets and foraging walks are other common places to encounter the fruit during its short season. If you want to taste a pawpaw, those are the places to start. Safely sampling from trusted vendors or joining a guided walk with an experienced forager. For gardeners and small-scale growers, the practical timeline is clear but patient. A planted pawpaw sapling typically takes time to begin producing fruit. Expect a waiting period on the order of 6 to 8 years before reliable harvests, depending on rootstock, site, and care. Pawpaws tend to like rich, moist soil with some shade in hotter climates, and they are often grown in small, managed groves rather than single scattered trees. One of their advantages is low pesticide need. Because commercial pests that plague monocultures are less intense in diversified, small-scale systems, pawpaw orchards can often be raised with gentler inputs. There are also ecological wins to remember. The zebra swallowtail butterfly lays its eggs on pawpaw leaves. Eastern wildlife historically relied on the tree's fruit as a seasonal food source. Reviving pawpaw plantings can therefore be a small act of rewilding, bringing back habitat for specialized insects and providing a food for mammals and birds that in turn help sustain a healthy local food web. We should also be honest about limits. The pawpaw's short shelf life means it is unlikely to become a mass-market import in the way bananas or apples are today. Its seasonality, a glory of September, means it will remain a special occasion taste for many. Laboratory findings about acetogenins invite more research but do not justify medical claims. The most powerful case for pawpaw is not that it will displace industrial fruit chains overnight, it's that it offers a distinct, nutrient-rich, local flavor that reconnects us to place and history. That reconnection is a form of repair, remembering the taste, reintroducing the tree to home landscapes, and supporting the small farmers and researchers who are cultivating better varieties. Plant a sapling and expect years of patient tending before harvest, but also anticipate that a single tree will become a small center of late summer abundance for family, neighbors, and wildlife. Seek a pawpaw at a festival or farmer's market this September and taste what many people have lost and are now finding again. So what did we discover? The pawpaw can contain 3 times the vitamin C of an apple in a 100-gram serving. It offers a richer mineral and amino acid profile than many temperate fruits, and it carries compounds that intrigue scientists in laboratory studies. Yet the rise of refrigerated long-distance logistics, made practical by inventions like Jones's portable truck refrigeration and the expansion of the cold chain, favored fruits that survive transit and display, not those meant for immediate local eating. The result, a nutritive native fruit sidelined by an efficient but narrowing system. If this unlocked something for you, curiosity, hunger, or a desire to plant, there are concrete next steps. Taste one at a festival or market, look up local growers or extension services, and if you plant, expect a 6 to 8 year wait for reliable fruiting. Links to Kentucky State University's Pawpaw research, festival information, and nurseries are in the description. Subscribe for more episodes in this series of Nature's Lost Vaults, where we find the foods that time and technology nearly forgot. Remember the line that opened this story: a fruit with 3 times the vitamin C of an apple, growing in the same woods where earlier generations raised their children and fed their travelers. The pawpaw never fully vanished from the land, only from our plates. Bringing it back is less about rescuing a miracle and more about choosing to taste a piece of local history, to plant a tree that butterflies will know by name, and to keep a season alive for the people who will come after us.